This is an overview of my custom-built LGA1155 PC. Now, I've been wanting to build this system for quite some time now, and I recently got parts to do so. So, yeah. This case is actually from Goodwill. I actually got it with a system from Goodwill. And the original system in here was a socket 478 system. It had a Celeron at 2.4 gigahertz, and it was a PC chips motherboard. So, yeah, pretty crappy system. And the case itself is pretty crappy and cheap as well. But it's the only spare ATX case I had around, so I pretty much had no choice but to use it. So let me just give you an overview of the case real quick. I'll just go ahead and start off with the two optical drives here. These are both DVD-ROM drives. I'm not sure if they're CDRW. I'm pretty sure they are. At least this bottom one is, because it says it right there, but the top one doesn't say. But yeah, these are both IDE drives, and I can't use them because my motherboard doesn't have an IDE controller on it. So yeah, they're just kind of in there. I'm just going to keep them in there until I get a SATA optical drive that I can actually use on this system. Anyway, down here we have a floppy drive, and once again this is unable to be used on this system because the motherboard also doesn't have an IDE or a floppy controller on it. Right here we have a power button. Up here we have a power LED, which is green, and below that we have a hard drive activity LED, which is red. And on the bottom here we have a reset button, and right here we have two USB 2.0 ports, which are covered by this flap. So yeah, that's that. And on the sides of the case here we have two case lights, which they're pretty cheap, and actually they have two LEDs, one at the top and one at the bottom. And the one at the bottom on this one doesn't work at all, and the one at the bottom on this one sometimes works, but sometimes flickers, and most of the time doesn't even work at all. But the ones at the top still seem to work just fine for some reason. I don't really understand why, but yeah. Alright, well let me just go ahead and show you the inside of the system now. Alright, so right here at the top, I'll just go ahead and start off with the power supply. Right here we have an Orion power supply, which actually came with this case, so it was pretty much free for the $10 I paid for the entire system. It is a 585 watt power supply, which is definitely enough to drive this system, but it's a very sketchy brand of power supply. I've never really heard of Orion before, but yeah, I'm not sure if it can actually output the full 585 watts or not, but this system doesn't need anywhere near that much, so it should be fine. And it is a model HP585D power supply. Alright, so the motherboard here is an Intel board, as you can see. It is an Intel DP67DE board. And I got a Pentium G630 processor for this system. Now, I was originally planning on getting a Core i3 or even a Core i5 for this system, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. And yeah, so the cooler I used is quite small, but the Pentium G630 doesn't get hot at all, so it's definitely sufficient enough to cool that CPU. And yeah, it works perfectly fine. Over there we have two DDR3 memory modules, each of which is 4 gigabytes, which gives this machine a total of 8 gigabytes, which is more than enough RAM that I'll need, but hey, the more RAM the better. Right here in the PCIe X16 slot is a graphics card, as you can see. This is a GeForce GT520 card with 1 gigabyte of video memory. Now, I was originally planning on using my nVidia GeForce 8600 card on this system, but after doing some testing, I found that the GeForce GT520 in here actually gives me much better performance than the 8600 does, and uses a whole lot less power, so I figured it was better just to use that. And the 8600 was only like a 256 meg card, and this is a gig, as I said, so I think the GT520 is a much better card for this system. Anyway, under that we have two PCIe X1 slots, which are both being unused, as you can see. And on the bottom we have one legacy PCI slot, which I'm currently using with my ATI TV Wonder 650 PCI capture card and TV tuner card. It actually also has an FM tuner. So yeah, that's the motherboard. Over here we have a SATA 200 gig Western Digital hard drive. And yes, it is only a SATA of 1.5 gigabyte drive, as you can see by the Molex power connection. It is an old drive. This motherboard does support SATA 6 gig per second. This motherboard also does have an onboard RAID controller, so it's pretty nice. But as you can see, I'm currently using it on the 6 gig per second SATA bus there. I know it's not going to fully utilize that, but I figured why not, and soon I'll be replacing this with a faster drive, or maybe even an SSD in the near future. So yeah, I'm also planning on upgrading the CPU and graphics card soon, but for now they work perfectly fine. Alright, I'll just go ahead and move the machine around to the back. Alright, so starting at the top here, you can see we have the power supply with a hard power switch. For the motherboard I/O, on the top here we have an eSATA port and two USB 2.0 ports. Below that we have two more USB 2.0 ports and an Ethernet port. Below that we have two more USB 2.0 ports. And right there we have two USB 3.0 ports and a Firewire 400 port. Right here we have a Realtek ALC889, I'm pretty sure. 7.1 channel audio connections there. And as you can see, this motherboard does not have onboard video, so you are required to use an add-in graphics card, which, as you can see, I have here. And this GeForce GT520 card has DVI, HDMI, and VGA on it. And yes, as you can see, I am missing the I/O shield on this motherboard. I actually got a very good deal on this motherboard. I only paid $30 for it, but unfortunately it doesn't include the I/O shield, which it doesn't really matter, as I don't look at the back very often. As you can see, the slot brackets are quite bent on this case. Like I said, this case is extremely cheap for what it is. And as you can see on the bottom here, we have the coaxial jacks for the digital and analog and TV tuner card, or receiver and tuner in this capture card here. And right here we have a proprietary connector for a special adapter that allows you to connect S-video and composite peripherals to this capture card. So yeah, that's an overview of the case here. So I'm going to go ahead and get it hooked up to my monitor, keyboard, and mouse, and I'll go ahead and show you the software end of this system. It is currently dual booting between Windows 7 and Mac OS 10.8.5 Mountain Lion. So yeah, Mountain Lion runs great on this system, as I'll show you, and of course so does Windows 7. So I'll be right back. Alright, I've now gotten the machine hooked up to a keyboard, monitor, and mouse, as you can see here. This monitor is actually a monitor I acquired recently. It is a ViewSonic 22-inch 1680 by 1050 widescreen monitor, and I got it for free with bad caps, and replacing the caps got it fully working again. So yeah, it's a really nice monitor for what it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and boot up the system. Alright, as you can see here, I've configured my Windows bootloader to allow me to boot into either Windows 7 or Mac OS 10. So first off, I'm just going to go ahead and boot into Windows 7. And yes, there is a stuck pixel on the display, but it seems to go away after the display warms up for a bit. So It's just 1 pixel and it doesn't bother me whatsoever, so yeah. Alright, let me go ahead and log in here. Alright, and as you can see, we are now booted up into Windows 7. So first off, I'm just going to go ahead and go into the system properties. So as you can see here, it has a Pentium G630, as I mentioned earlier, at 2.7 GHz, 8 GB of RAM, DDR3, 1333 MHz, and a 64-bit operating system, of course. Let's go ahead into the Windows Experience Index. It does get a 5.0, as you can see. The processor gets a 6.6, which is okay, but like I said, I'm planning on upgrading this soon, hopefully. The RAM gets a 7.7, which is definitely good. Graphics card gets 5.0 on the standard graphics, and for gaming graphics it gets a 6.5. And the hard disk, of course, gets a 5.4 because it is a mechanical SATA 1.5 GB per second hard disk. So, let's go back here. I'm going to go ahead and go into Device Manager real quick. Alright, so under Display Adapters it sees the GeForce GT520. It has an Intel 82579V Gigabit Ethernet controller on board, so that's pretty nice. It is fully supported under OS X too. As you can see, it detects both cores of the processor and the ATI Unified AV Stream driver, which is the capture card. So yeah, everything works and everything is detected, so yeah. One thing I found weird about this board, and it required a second driver, driver for, wasn't included in Windows, is this thing that says Consumer IR Devices. I'm assuming that means infrared, but I'm not 100% sure. And the driver on Intel's site, of course, was the same thing as that. Now, it's just for the board itself, and it doesn't seem to have a infrared receiver on it, but if anyone knows what that is, please let me know in the comments, because I don't really know, and it's kind of strange. So yeah, that's Windows 7. As you can see, it does work perfectly fine. So now I'm just going to go ahead and reboot into Mac OS X. Like I mentioned, it is 10.8.5 Mountain Lion. So I'll go ahead and restart. Go ahead and select Mac OS X. Alright, now normally for my Hackintoshing, I'd normally use the standard Chameleon bootloader. However, in this Hackintosh, I decided to try a different bootloader. This time I decided to use the Clover EFI bootloader. Now this bootloader actually allows the system to use the stock Macintosh EFI boot ROM to load the operating system. So therefore it allows me to access, I don't know what the real advantage of it is, but it does start the OS quite a bit faster than Chameleon would normally. And I like it because it allows you to use a mouse in the bootloader screen. So to boot off the Mac partition here, you can either double click it with the mouse or just press enter. So I'll just go ahead and do that now. And as you can see, it immediately starts booting, just like a normal Mac would. And it also gives you the newer style Apple logo on the boot screen that was introduced with Lion. It looks slightly more indented and slightly more refined than the older Snow Leopard and older Apple logo. So as you can see, it is booting. And as you can see, it does boot rather quickly, so that's quite nice. In a second here, I'll be brought up to the login screen. I'll go ahead and log in. Alright, and as you can see, I have booted up to a Mac OS X desktop. And everything works perfectly on this machine. As you can see, all the animations are perfectly smooth with practically no lag whatsoever. This is probably the most intensive animation in the entire OS, is opening a Launchpad folder. And as you can see, it does indeed open perfectly smooth. So yeah, let's go ahead and know about this Mac. As you can see, it is running 1085, and it actually detects the processor as a 2.7 GHz Intel Core i5. So I believe that's being injected by the bootloader, and yeah, it is, like I said, a Pentium G630 as you saw in Windows. As you can see, it detects all 8 GB of 1333 MHz DDR3 memory. Go ahead and do more info here. As you can see, it detects the machine as a mid-2012 Mac Pro. Sees the graphics card, of course, and the display, the VG2230WM. Now for the memory, I do have the memory modules put in primary slots. However, OS X detects them in the secondary slots. See, the primary slots are these two right here, and these are supposed to be populated first. And these are the secondary slots, of course. But for some reason, OS X detects it backwards, which is quite odd. I don't really know why, but yeah. So that's Mac OS X. As you can see, it runs 100% perfectly on this system. So that is my LGA1155 Custom Built PC. Go ahead and shut it down. It is shutting down, as you can see. It does take quite a bit in Mountain Lion for some reason. So that is my LGA1155 Custom Built PC. Hope you enjoyed this video.